word here, revenue. We gotta go get it. And
Yes.
if you don't have a scale, you can't charge people, right? So, things like that. So we triage.
And I get charged almost every week. Okay, so Lisa thinks that the $100,000 should somehow move towards the top of the priority list. I think Camille was saying that she thinks that this entire list should be looked at holistically. I think that's where I'm at. I think right now we're putting a ton of money into the safety complex. I don't think that we need to put any more priority on that. I think we need to balance our workload a little better.
Right,
And-
just so Lisa understands, because we won't have any control of bringing that $5 billion budget down to $4,900,000.
She does, she's on the scope subcommittee.
We would still spend the same amount. It's just that 100,000 of that could go back to the taxpayer. That's what I was trying to say. And we'd use that 100 from here.
Yeah, but, yeah. Mhm. But how do we control that?
Well, that was
that was
the
your
point of my
Going
question.
back to, once the budget's passed, we often talk about what we have in our, we're gonna have to have that discussion. There'll be an ECS, real number versus a projection. There'll be all sorts of numbers. We'll have a discussion. Be part of my selectmen's report in the next regular meeting after, after the budget
So,
passes.
Anna,
We'll
can
talk
you
about it.
put a tickler down for us to talk about how we're gonna manage that, if we're gonna, for that 100,000? Because I won't remember it, I can tell you right now. So tonight, our goal is to, so let me just make sure I understand it. We're gonna decide what changes we think we'd like to make to this capital plan right now. When we go to the public hearing, and then we convene afterwards, we'll have another chance to take a look at this, if we wanna make any changes. So what we do tonight is not necessarily cast in stone, but it will create a revision for Anna to hand out at the public hearing. Is that right? And of course, I wanna know this, because he's not gonna be here, and I need to understand the flow.
So Anna's gonna go and she's gonna take the things that we asked her to change and she's gonna make a new report based on those questions, and I'll read off those questions, make sure that we have everything clear. And then from that, if this board is ready to act on this, we can act on this, but I think we're gonna have to just kind of say that this is our line in the sand for the capital. But I think we need all the elements of the budget together so that we can say, if we do these things, then the impact on the mill rate is X. Right, we've got 3 knobs to turn between the capital and the budget with Board of Ed and the town budget, but we've got those 3. Did I forget something? I think that's.
Definitely gonna get past Wednesday night to figure out what you're doing on that side before you decide on a capital budget, right?
Yeah. So we can, that's what I said, we can have conversations, deliberations, things that we like, we don't like, we can set some lines in the sand, but I think we need an agreement on what we think the BOE budget should be, what we think the remainder of the town budget should be, and what we think that the capital should be, and then we add those 3 numbers together, add the debt services, and then from that, Anna's gonna compare that to the grand list and whatever other revenue streams we have, and tell us what the impact on the mill rate is. Did I miss something? God, you'd almost think I did this before.
Well, so for instance, what I wanna understand is, there's 500, I know it's bonded money, but we have $550,000 in this plan for a fire truck, which I'd like to see moved out a year until we have some information.
So the bonded funds would go into the debt services, so Anna would roll that into the debt services for out years. So she can tell us what the impact of that 500,000 is, because that's gonna mean a bond, which is gonna mean X number of dollars a year for some number of years. If it's a $300 truck and we're paying $3,000 a year for 30 years, whatever, 10 years, she can do the math.
Right, but I don't wanna see it in this year's.
That's it,
plan.
so when we're all done with our individual things, we can go through and talk about things that we don't like. Looks like Board of Ed is still going,
Well, I think we should
so
start with that.
perhaps we
Get
have,
to the end though, so we should, there are public delegations at the end of there, so they'll be over here soon,
okay.
so. Keep rolling.
So do we have any more specific questions on what's before us before we start deliberating on some of the numbers, and we can send Ando off to rerun the form? While we're doing that, we can deliberate while we're waiting for Board of Ed?
One more question.
Sure. Ma'am?
The policemen are asking for 3 vehicles, is what I heard you say. Okay, and this thing says 2.
Right,
I know you explained it, but I guess I didn't absorb it. Would you
I'm
kindly
gonna make a
repeat it?
correction, it's gonna say 3, which.
Oh, it's just a mistake.
Yeah.
Okay, I can live with mistakes. So, so on this sheet here, this is what Joe did for us. So they're looking for a patrol vehicle. I don't know if you guys all have this.
Yeah, I do, but I gotta pull it out.
Joe did a nice job on it.
I think I've got
He
it.
handed it out at our last meeting.
It's gonna be theirs.
Huh?
I think it's this thing.
Can I share?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have it, Anna?
I have not signed it.
I think he handed it out after that, but
It's not my thing.
there's no date on it, but I think it doesn't matter. I'm
Anna's
not-
has a date on it.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought he handed it, it doesn't matter.
That was a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, so it's a patrol vehicle, a detective vehicle, and a spare vehicle.
Police.
Patrol.
Help me understand why we're buying a new spare vehicle. Need a
So
little info
what's
on that.
No,
highlighted, I
I
guess
think
is
they're
what's this
replacing a spare vehicle.
1920.
Oh, okay, whatever.
So, well, they all trickle down, right? So the
I-
worst thing in the parking lot is gonna be called the spare vehicle. When we go out and buy a new vehicle, something else is gonna trickle down to become a
Right.
spare vehicle.
But we don't want to buy a new spare vehicle, right? Are we in a
We're gonna
position
buy a
to
new
do that?
patrol vehicle, Lisa. And whatever is on that lot for the longest period of time with the most miles is gonna become the new spare vehicle.
The worst car,
But-
in the fleet's gonna become
Yeah.
the new spare.
Right, but it says we were going to buy a new spare vehicle on here. Go to the next page. It says
Yeah,
Let's find that other thing.
it's a,
it's replacing a spare vehicle.
yeah,
one of the spare
I'm just
vehicles.
saying, I'm not in support of that. I mean, I don't think we want to be, we're in a position to buy
So,
spare vehicles.
The
Let it
new
cast-
vehicle is gonna go to an officer, and the oldest vehicle that one of our officers is using will become the new spare vehicle. We're gonna
No, that's not what this says.
get rid of the spare vehicle.
So, vehicle 31 on the first page on the bottom, the K-9 vehicle, will then become one of the oldest in the fleet.
32 is.
And
Yeah.
that will more, or
Okay, that should be
car
the spare.
24,
No, I like
that
what-
will become a spare.
Okay.
So
So then we're still buying 3 though, right?
we are buying 3. We're replacing 2 patrol vehicles we do every year, but we do need a detective car. They're all being paid for by fees that they collect.
And
No
do their
taxpayer
fees-
money,
So do their fees that they collect, does that go in the general fund?
no.
So they keep their money in their budget?
It goes in CNRE.
And is there sufficient money from what their revenues to cover their vehicles?
There will be, because we're constantly taking the
So
money in.
at this point, is there enough?
They're
There-
not buying
no.
it for cash.
No, but,
They're bringing an acquisition, so we are betting that these fees will still keep coming in. It's a good point, but yes, there's always outside overtime, there's always jobs being done, and they collect fees for that. There's requirements that they have, people have to hire police officers. If they don't have enough
For
money,
traffic detail
they're
and
not gonna
things.
buy.
you're talking about for traffic detail?
Yeah,
Okay.
traffic detail throughout
So,
town.
you may have answered it and I wasn't giving you my full attention, but the revenues that they bring in from these traffic details, are they sufficient to cover these expenditures?
What we have proposed, yes. 'Cause we
All
looked
3
at-
vehicles are covered.
Yes.
They will be, yes.
So not the full acquisition cost of the vehicles, but the anticipated debt
Finance.
payments of the vehicles are covered.
For this
So
year.
if a car costs $50,000, you finance that over 5 years, yes, we have $10,000 in that fund to pay for the car
payment.
payment that year. That's what you're saying, Anna, right?
Right.
That's on this thing. That's on
And
this.
to-
And we're anticipating, excuse me, but we're anticipating that they'll have more revenue next year to cover next year's payments, et cetera.
Right. There's a long history of
So
them
how
having
come,
detailed work.
again, this is back to our general fund question. How come they don't put stuff in the general fund? Like everybody else does, except for Dave, except for special revenue accounts,
This was done on purpose. We increased the fees to pay for the police cars.
which is perfect. I'm just
Well,
trying to understand,
They don't control the money, like Dave does control his
Right,
money.
right. So I'm just trying to understand, that's
I
all.
know.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what we're doing. I'm trying to understand why we wouldn't take the revenues from the traffic details and put them in the general fund. like we do for tipping fees and everything else? Why is the police department different?
Explain why that fund was established.
So the CNRE
Mhm.
is a
gonna say
rolling fund. It doesn't lapse at the end of the year. If we put the revenues in the general fund, then, you know, at the end of the year, we close it out and it goes to fund balance. So
Okay.
when they went before the Board of Selectmen and proposed to increase the fees from $5 to $25 so that we could establish a fund to pay for police vehicles going forward. And that's the reason that the funds are going into the CNRE
So it doesn't get
fund.
wiped out at the end of the year?
Correct,
So that's one of the reasons why we did it?
yes,
If it was in the general fund, it would have got zeroed out at the end of the year and gone into fund balance?
yes.
Okay.
And that's why it would be good to have an accounting of the CNRE fund so we can see the ins and outs, and that you might be able to track it better than if you were
Yeah.
to see the detail of, you know.
Okay.
The sub-funds
Yeah, I just
within
didn't
the fund.
understand it, because how would I know?
You would.
It's one of the things we learned when we were independent, is how the police forces do this. Stonington taxpayers haven't bought their own police cars for decades.
Mhm.
They've been doing this, we didn't know that, because we've been, you know, the state police thing, and nobody was there to tell us. So, one of the first things we learned when Mike came aboard, Chief Mike, is this is what other places
Well,
do.
right, but to just carry that a little bit further, we could take the tack that, okay, just because they're bringing in so much revenue doesn't mean it all has to go to new vehicles. It could go towards their budget or some other expenditure.
Right, they
You know
have
what I'm
plenty of
saying?
capital, the things that they, you know, the machines and the.
Right.
Absolutely,
So,
that would be a
but-
goal.
Right, but kind of like the conversation that we've been having about them tonight, about their vehicles, is, yeah, they're getting 3 new vehicles because they can pay for it, where I'm asking us to consider, okay, they have that kind of, they have enough money to cover the cost of those 3, but what if we didn't take all that revenue and allocate it for new vehicles? What if we only bought 2 vehicles and took some of the money that they bring in and pay for something else? I mean, it's not a bad conversation to have, right? I mean, I'm not saying that we would or we wouldn't, but just because we have the money to cover it doesn't mean that we're gonna necessarily spend it there, or necessarily that we have to spend it there. So I just think it's worth considering that.
My only point was gonna be line item 43 on this acquisition form is an expedition that says that it's supposed to be replaced in 2020, so I suspect that's the one that's gonna roll into the spare.
It's
a
your
2000
F-250.
It's a 2009.
Oh, that's the animal control officer, vehicle though.
Yeah, but he rolls in between departments, I think.
No, so what are you
I'm
looking at?
thinking it's
Animal
gonna be,
control?
item 43, Mark, he's talking about.
It just seems to me, based on what he's got here for a replacement date of 2020, that must be the one that he's gonna roll into the spare.
Yeah, we have money
Otherwise-
for that, don't we?
Yeah, that money's been set aside for the purchase of this vehicle in CNRE. Actually, a portion of it came from Dominion.
Right,
I'm not sure, I
Nice.
can't remember if it was 20 or 25,000.
I think it was 25.
It was a nice amount.
Okay, so that one's funded through CNRE and donations.
But I haven't heard of them looking at vehicles. It's not in our capital plan for this year.
Well, that's kind of why I thought that it had to be the one rolling into the spare,
it was
because it's not in
something-
our capital plan.
It was something that was previously approved,
It was.
Yeah.
We just haven't got around buying it.
no, for a lot of reasons.
Right.
Okay,
That's all I have for now.
any other questions on the capital plan? And you said you had some other questions that you're gonna
Yeah,
ask later?
I think we've covered them. I think we've covered them. And I guess we'll have a discussion at some point about the fire trucks,
Yeah,
the significant, you know. but- You wanna have it now?
yeah, we can. No,
Okay.
that's,
Till-
all I was
till
gonna
Board
try
of
to
Ed
do.
arrives, sure.
Yeah, also I was gonna try to do is get the changes that we said we would like to make to this capital report. So that Ann can make the changes now, because Board of Ed is at least 20 minutes away. If she can make those changes, we can talk about the different line items, and we can get the report back, and maybe after Board of Ed, maybe, well, they're done now. If we need her to be here while we're having a line item by line item discussion, that's fine.
We need Anna to go get some additional information for us.
Yes.
To know whether we want to change some of those numbers or not.
I think, yes. And that's why I
Like
think
the
that if we
revamp.
have her make the changes that we've already talked about, that would be helpful in our
Yeah.
deliberations on the capital plan. So that's what I was proposing. If she makes the changes to this form that shows grants, fixes the colors for the Waterford boat to a CRNE, fix all the totals, run the file with and without the vehicles that we've been discussing on Wednesday, show the acquisition plan for the Ford Escape that's currently blue, spread across time, and show all 3 vehicles. Is there anything else to this form that we'd like her to change?
Yeah, we
Well,
would.
So if I make, I can go and work on this, but I'm not gonna be able to give you color copies tonight. I do
Okay.
not have a color printer. So
Okay.
I have to, I send the files to Public Works, and they make the copies for me.
Okay.
We only have the
You
one
could,
color copier
would
in
it,
this
would we
building.
be okay with having her email it? Do you guys have color copiers home?
Yeah,
That might work.
but if we could see it tonight, at least so we can see a black and white version of it, that we can at least make sure that, yep, that's what we asked for.
But, okay,
That's the only reason why I wanted you to make the changes, so that we can see what this form actually looks like if the things that we discussed were corrected.
Okay, so I had written down revaluation, like the total cost, and how much do we have in CNRE. And, in looking at the capital plan, to look at the CNRE totals and tie them out to Department 724. Check the totals of the black numbers on the CNRE plan. And that was.
Show
it.
grants, you had a question about grants in there?
There was just that
Oh,
grant.
well, I was gonna highlight, I just needed to highlight those.
You couldn't really show them to us in
And
red
you're
if
gonna
it's in
take out
black
the
and white.
19,000 for the server replacement.
Well, that was, we talked about that, but we didn't say we were gonna do it yet.
yeah,
do we
let's
make-
do that.
And you want to change the 3,
Yeah.
okay, so let's debate it before we say yes. So for the server in the police department, do we feel that that should be covered by the $5 million that's already been allocated for the building?
Yes.
Yes.
You want a
Is
motion?
is there any downside to do that?
No.
No.
19,000 coming out of the money to fix the building.
They can,
Yeah.
they're wizards over there. They can suck up 19
Okay.
grand.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay, so if you run this report without that $19,000, we haven't made any motions to approve a capital. We're not going to approve
Right.
each individual
Yeah,
line
yeah,
item,
right.
what the
These are
motion's going to
just
be for the capital plan.
recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any other changes or edifications? We want to show that there's 3 PDs in here
Yeah,
Well, the
as well.
Commission on Aging, you're gonna switch those numbers to red, right? Because that was another change we talked about, because that's gonna be grant coming in. And then also, did we talk about the Public Works vehicle that is in the budget?
I asked her to
Oh,
run it
the-
both ways.
The roll,
I mean,
Yeah.
it would be 40K a
Hook
year
truck.
for the next
truck.
5
Yeah.
years, right?
You know,
What-
if I may on that,
Sure.
so after the meeting the other night, Joe came by and we had a discussion on it, and, I mean, one of the, sometimes, when we sit here, we talk about thinking outside the box, and when we crafted the budget and included the acquisition payments for the hook truck in the departmental budget, we were in some ways thinking outside the box. Because, this way, and Joe did a good job to really keep his bottom line as flat as possible. And so, in some ways, by leaving the acquisition payment plan, in his departmental budget, it would hold him accountable to keep, to watching that line in his budget. If we remove it, it's just not all gonna be there. So we have the 1 year with it, a little bit more, but then once we get beyond that 1 year and we don't have to make the payments to Willie Waste anymore, we'll be saving that money in the budget.
But then I would think each department would want that same flexibility.
Right, that's what I was.
Right. I understand Joe owns the acquisition plan, so he's a little bit different, but my concern would be if one-off, we start doing one-off for this department, and then this guy wants to, you know what, we're gonna include it in our budget too, and,
In some ways, we're more or less doing that with the police now because they have, they have a way that they can actually, make fees to do the replacement of their vehicles going forward. So, those are just comments that I, thank you for
The
letting me
other-
share
Okay.
with you on that.
Thank you.
The other item, and the reason why I put it in the budget, I may have mentioned this already in this meeting, if not, it was in an earlier one, that they're interlocked. His hook truck, I did mention it tonight, and the payments to Willie Waste they offset each other. And he put it in there for a quicker acquisition to get it, to stop making the payments so he could afford the hook truck. This whole budget, delicate balance is predicated on getting the hook truck and stopping the Willie Waste.
but if the vehicle's in the acquisition fund, is it gonna take longer for him to pull the trigger?
Yes. Yes. Goes through the second acquisition thing, it goes through financing, yes. We're just getting trucks now that we approved, and we just received the second police car that we approved last June. Different animal, it's gotta get the stickers on it, it's gotta get the cage in it and the
But the
lights,
difference of the time, from the time it was approved to the time we wrote the purchase order, had to be, I mean, that's really what we're talking about. How quick can I write a purchase order to order the vehicle? How long it takes to actually get the vehicle doesn't change by the funding stream. If I do it from
Yeah.
my budget, yeah, right, so
Yeah.
part of the time that you're talking about is the actual, how long does it take to actually get the vehicle?
Yeah.
So, I guess we would have to hear pros and cons. To me, it seems more
Could be here
consistent that
Wednesday.
it would sit in the budget with everything else.
It'll be coming Wednesday, so.
Okay, so do we want Anna to go off and rerun this file, or do we want to keep
I
her
have
here
one
so
more
we go through
comment.
the line item questions?
I think it's incidental, but under the police department, we have $3 million, 2 years of $3 million. We mean,
I'm gonna make
Yeah.
one 2 million.
thank you.
There's two F-250s in there. I haven't heard any comments on it. I'm not in favor of the F-250s. I don't think we should have those kind of vehicles riding around for.
Thank you.
They are emergency vehicles. Well,
Where do you see them in here?
you have one under the police chief of
Yeah.
Flanders, and you
And
have
then-
one under the fire marshal's office.
marshal.
They both know how I feel. Their argument has been that the turnout gear now, by law, cannot go in a
Oh, that's right.
compartmented vehicle. But then another conversation that you all had, and you brought this information out, the turnout gear is now required to be cleaned. So they can't have the soot of a fire on their gear. It has to be professionally cleaned. I think that might be in their budget too. So if they're at a fire and they're wearing stuff and they take it off, stick it on the fire truck and let it go back to the station, get it cleaned, and then it can go back in their
I like what you're
Blazer
thinking.
or their Explorer or Expedition or whatever they drive. But we can get away with $35,000 vehicles under that line, not 50.
Or
I
the
don't
back of their
think we
Chevette.
should be buying, the only expensive vehicles should be at Public Works because they're pushing snow with that. They're putting the sanders on the back, they're loading things. They have the Tommy gates, the lift gates. Big difference.
So how do we know they even need a new pickup truck?
Because their vehicles are
Well, okay, but
beyond.
let's look at the tool, right? Flanders Fire
Okay.
Department. I see lines 8 and 9, am I right? Oh, sorry, 1 through 9. So,
It's the first one on
it's the first
The
one.
first one.
So it's a 2006. We don't know how many miles are on it.
Right.
So I
I
guess.
know you would ask Joe for that.
I
earlier
did. I
today.
think he's gonna make that change. But see, that's important information because,
Yeah.
I mean, we have some when I worked at Dominion, we had some vehicles that were just that old, but they had like 20,000 miles on
Yeah,
them.
they
'cause we
drive
didn't-
around campus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, that tells you a lot about the characterization of the vehicle, which we don't have any information on that.
Your other one is fire marshals, also in yellow.
Yep,
2014. The thing is here, this gets handed down to the assistant fire marshal, and that vehicle is the 2009, right under it. And that would be handed down to engineering. And engineering being Bill Mulholland is actually planning and zoning. We're gonna take money out of their budgets when we get to their budgets. I think they have travel, 500 each. It's minimal. It's minimal mileage, but we'll take that out, and now they can drive around the town with an identified vehicle and keep it in the fleet, an old vehicle.
So you think Mark, I heard you say that you think we can get away with a $30,000 to $35,000?
I say 35, others might say 30. 35, just to cover, these vehicles, costing more money these days. I don't know what the state bid is on this. This is
Yeah,
I'm guessing.
all right.
30, 35. The other issue is Jim Barone came here the other night and said that we could go another year with the fire engine. I said right there, well, you're sending someone in to say keep the fire engine. So
Sure,
I
you
know
can
what
make a
you
lot of
guys, I
friends
know what
back
you
at
guys
the
are going to
house.
do, so we can make this conversation really quick. But you are going to need to buy more than likely 2 fire vehicles next year. And what the departments were doing is, we could probably get away with another year, but I don't think Flanders can get away with another year. They spend a lot of money on repair on their truck. So you might, and that might be okay. You might get a good package deal buying 2 at the same time. But keep that in mind that we are putting off the inevitable. That's all.
Okay. So how do we feel about changing that number from 50 to 35? Or I'd go for 30, but I'll support 35. I mean, we just heard that he doesn't need a $50,000 vehicle.
I guess I just don't recall the details of that conversation exactly. And the one thing I did remember was the retrofitting or the loading up of these vehicles, like the 2 vehicles, so that they would, meet the current standards and needs. So could that happen with a lesser vehicle, is my question.
That was the answer to Jason's question, because Jason said, why do you need such a big, expensive vehicle? And he said that 17,000 of it or something was the light kit and the sticker kit and everything like that. A large percentage
So are
of
we
it.
talking different vehicle or different, different vehicle completely?
Different vehicle, have what they have now and just, a newer version
do
of
you-
that. Chris did have a problem. He was driving up to the blasting area where Costco is blasting the ledge and was grounding out in his vehicle. It might not be appropriate for that kind of terrain, but we have vehicles in town that we could have him borrow should he need to go up there.
For that type of
Because
thing.
we're not going to be building a lot of Costcos.
Right.
More than likely, he's going to be going to 38 Hope Street to check the alarms, and the sound apartments to check alarms, and that's what he uses, and fires and
Right.
and
I
travel.
like how you're
So,
thinking, borrow a vehicle. Doesn't have to-
I think we can't
Yeah.
have these departments, especially those departments running around in vehicles that our citizens can't even afford.
Thank you.
And the pickup trucks look awfully shiny and new, and it's one thing if Public Works is doing it because it's the work they do, but
Does-
these are typically passenger vehicles.
But Joe, when we were talking to him about the specs, he said he doesn't spec out the vehicles, he just purchases. So who controls the specs of the vehicles?
The department heads generally tell them what they want for specs.
But is there a check and balance so that when they say they want a Maserati, it's like somebody can say, it's not really the best?
Generally, that comes out, and it comes out generally before it gets to you. This year, it didn't.
Yeah, because
I
generally
should
it
have
would,
pulled these and said, but I kind of let it ride and said, well, we'll let the Board of Finance cut it. Let you guys be the bad guys. And no, I didn't.
Mark, you
But I
didn't
did
make any
leave it
friends
on.
with
No,
that.
here, I'm talking here. I mean,
Okay.
this isn't your idea, this is mine. I think it's something we need to knock down,
okay,
Okay.
thank you.
given the budget.
All right.
All right, any other questions on the capital plan before we send Anna off to do some homework?
Well, so are we moving the fire truck out? Did everybody agree on that? I mean,
I don't.
did we get through everything?
No,
or-
we haven't gone through line item by line item
Oh, I
yet.
thought we were doing that so that Anna could go and update maybe I didn't
I
follow
mean,
you.
there's more?
No.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, if you want to go through this before we ask Anna Line to go, we can go through line item by line item, we can ask her to redo it.
Well, I think we gave
I
it,
just-
she has the highlighted items.
I
I
think.
think
Yeah, I
there's just
think
one
that's pretty
remaining
good.
thing. Do we
Right.
move the fire truck out of here? That's all that Lisa's asking. Right, that's the only thing left, right?
Yeah, that's all I see,
That's the only thing
unless
in
you
there.
guys have something else.
Is there anybody that does not think, okay, does anybody think that Anna should not run the report with the fire truck moved out of here?
should not run the report.
You
I
can't
think
do this
that's
I
to
think we all
ours.
think that she should run the report with the fire truck moved out a
Yeah,
year.
okay.
Okay,
Yes.
we're not making a motion, so I'm trying not to
Right.
word it in
Negative
such a
skinny
way that we
jeans.
have,
It's not a motion, it's fluid.
yes, and that's what I'm
Yeah.
trying
Based
to
on
ask.
Wednesday night, it's
Yes.
gonna be fluid.
Yeah,
I'm asking how people want the report run, so we would like the
That's fine.
report run with the fire truck moved out a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
and then we,
Yes.
then we.
Any
figure
other
out what we're gonna
questions?
do with the two- Then we can figure out what we're gonna do with the 2 fire trucks at some later point.
Any other questions on the capital plan?
No.
For the next.
Any other questions on the capital
I'm
plan?
good.
Okay, so I said we'd take a break at 9, since we're switching subjects, you wanna take a 5
Yeah.
right
Oh,
now?
yeah.
We'll take a 5
Thank
right
you.
now. And John, if you wanna leave it recording, I'll just turn off the mic. Alrighty then. Call back to order the East Lyme Board of Finance special meeting. We are now going to move into deliberations on the Board of Education section of our budget. And the first thing we want to do is go through the questions and answers that you were nice enough to furnish. So if we can talk through those. I heard and I didn't see that you sent out an update today.
I did, yes.
So you're going to have to kind of talk us through what it is that's in the update.
I've got copies too.
Okay.
So we can share those.
Okay. So has the board members all familiarized themselves with the answers, the responses to the questions? I don't think we need Mr. Newton to read through and read each one of the answers, but is there any questions about the answers?
Yes, Bill, I have a few questions.
Okay. So do you want to just start there? Do you want to just start by having us ask questions? Do you have anything new that you want to present, or?
No, other than the document that we sent today. If,
Okay.
I can pass it out now.
Yeah, if you could,
It's
please.
just a staffing update. The second sheet, I broke it down further.
Okay.
So,
Actually, I think I copied that. Yeah, I've got it. Yep, I got it. Yep. Yes,
I
so,
didn't print it out.
all right. So there, that's the full one, and then this is a breakdown of the certified, just to make it clear, because I know it's.
These are all the same page?
Yeah, one sheet.
It's just one
take
sheet?
one and pass it.
Oh, okay.
Yep, and then I got another one, just take one. Pass it on, you got that.
yeah, I got this one and
Being
that
in
one.
Are you in
school.
a position to highlight basically what's different, or is it not, that's the same?
Yeah, no, we can definitely
Just,
show
I
it's really
mean,
the special areas, teachers, and then overall, just on this calculation. That's the further broken down of just a certified.
Is this page 2?
You can treat it as page 2, yes. Take one and you could have two guys, two pages.
All right, so I'll call this page 2, just so that when we talk, we're all talking about the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So if you could highlight for us the changes, or at least explain to us what changed, so that we can take a look at it.
Go through this first, beforehand.
Yeah, if you could explain to us the differences first, and I'll go back to Ann.
Okay.
That's fine.
Let me go to my. Okay. So if you go down, really go down to the right side of the column. Yeah. The variances. Flanders School, let me use yours. For this one, no, this one. So Flanders School was originally reflected as a 5.40, that should be a 5.60.
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. Could you repeat that?
The variance on the main page of all the staffing FTEs,
Yep,
the large one there. On the far right side, if you take a look at the variance,
Okay.
that should reflect 5.60 and not 5.40. There's a 0.2 in special area.
oh, the old one says 5.4.
Yeah, exactly. So just, and the new reflects 5.6. Then in Willoughby Haynes, certified staff, it should reflect 1 minus 1.0, and it reflects on the other page minus 0.8 FTE, and there's that other 0.2 music. So that should say 1.0 is in there, and then Niantic Center. On the old one, it said for certified staff, again, it said 3.4, and it should reflect the 3.90, which just changed the bottom total, grand total variance from 9.80 to 9.70. And those were the, and then the second sheet, just we wanted to break down further the elementaries, so you can see those. There's a lot of questions that came forth from all of you around the elementary comparisons, so we thought we'd.
So it's this, but more enhanced. Right, but
Yeah,
this is what you
exactly,
did give us originally.
exactly, yeah, captures all of the breakdown of the current 2019 proposed and the variance. Yeah, just to help with more clarity.
The totals are the same, though, between these two sheets, right? There's more detail in this one?
Yeah, there's more detail, exactly. And the total between this for certified and this one, the two that you have, will match now as well,
Okay.
are the same. So it's just a further breakdown of the larger 528 staff, showing down to just the certified. Okay.
Okay, is that clear to everybody? We're good? We're good. Okay, thank you.
So I actually have,
Go ahead, I was gonna say, go ahead, you have questions.
I have questions on this particular sheet, so I'm just wondering
Yeah,
if I should
that's
ask
fine,
those
yeah.
questions first, Ann?
Yeah, that's fine, because I was just gonna go in order of the responses, so this is
Okay.
fine. We're talking about it now, so might as well
Okay.
complete
Go
the
ahead.
conversation.
Great. Okay, so I had two questions with regard to the sheet, staffing by school. When I look at the sheet that was presented to us last year, and I look at the 18-19 year, the number was 527.18, and now it's 538.27. So can you explain that difference?
The FY 2018 was 527.
Nope,
The FY 2019 last year was,
527.8.
yep. Yeah.
So
Yep,
last,
so,
so last year when you were projecting.
yeah, exactly, you've got the, yep. So what you've got, there has been some additions. 4 IAs came, that we had to hire, were part of coverage for Salem students. So there's 4 there. There was 3 that we found that were not in the original staffing plan because they were part of revenue programs,
Okay,
before and
I know.
after school programs, before and after school programs to revenue-based
So
programs.
you're saying you didn't add 3 additional
They
people?
were not part of this original full staffing plan. This is like a moving target. So they were not in that.
So how did you
for this
pay
year.
for them?
Out of revenue. Before and after school, we charge parents. The money comes in, we cover the cost of the staffing through that.
Okay,
Those are revenue programs, and that's how, you might have seen that revenue sheet that we sent too as part of the packet.
yes.
How the revenues
yes.
decrease and go down, we're paying for staffing out of those.
So there's, and it's a moving target if you have, so for before and after care, depending on who signs up, we may need more aides to come in, because we have a high enrollment, so depending on the child to teacher ratio, so that's part of it. And then there were actually 3 people that were not counted in the staffing plan. So I pull my information from the staffing plan. There were 3 people that just were, just by accident omitted from last year's staffing plan, so they weren't counted in what you got. So that's 3
Okay.
people that,
You also have,
So they were omitted in prior years?
right.
3, so that's 3
Well,
after?
definitely last year, again, I'd have to go back and see when these people were hired and paid for out of they're out of revenue. They don't impact our operating
No.
budget, but, they're out of program revenue
So these are
All
3
paid through
aftercare personnel
or before.
that were not
yeah,
included
before or
in
after school care. Yep.
before or after?
Yep.
And
Go ahead.
that comes from the special revenue accounts that we don't have any exposure to,
We
the
s-
town. So, I guess my question is, if we're not paying for those out of your budget that you get, what, should we be including those headcount numbers then in this chart?
I followed what historically you've been provided, so if you don't want to see them, we can pull them out.
Or
Historically, the
at
task
least I
has
think
been provided.
maybe it should be a footnote to explain why. All right, so we're up
Yeah.
to 7, we're up to 4 IAs that you had to hire that weren't in the original plan last year because of Salem students. So
Yeah.
you're going for a budget 18-19, and you didn't include the 4 people that you had to hire in September because you weren't aware that.
Exactly, Camille. This fluctuates so much
Right.
over the course of a year. We give you a snapshot of one
Okay.
moment in time.
Right.
That changes with 530 plus staff, it changes drastically.
Right, but here's where I'm trying to get to. It's a snapshot at a point in time, at the same time every year, right? So that should be able to indicate trends to us, if it's a snapshot at a certain point in time. So, well, let me finish my, okay, so 4 IAs, 3 before and after care. So that's 7.
You have security staff that were added this year?
Wasn't that
as
the
well?
year before?
We had one at central office that was added
Yeah.
You have 1 security?
at central office, and then
And then you have some tech, for security. One
security,
central office.
and then we had to add one for 1 year only because of the 2 entrances.
Yep, at Lily B. Haynes. Because of the school construction going on, we needed 2. One at one entrance, one at the other.
Okay, the reason why I'm really trying to hone in on that number is because you're showing a reduction in staff for the upcoming year
Yep,
of 9.7 now.
yes.
But really, we're still up from 2 years ago.
I could be up or down next week too, depending on, I could have 3 kids move into district, 4 kids move out of district. The numbers that I gave you for enrollment, the 2699, we've lost 2 kids since
No, but we're
just
talking
last
about
week.
staff.
I know, I'm just giving that, using that as an example. This changes, weekly, as to pertaining to how many, staff are coming or going and who we need to hire depending on students. Especially the IAs, and I'm talking not necessarily certified, I'm talking more of the paraprofessionals, when you have 112 of them across the district.
What's IA stand for?
Instructional assistants, sorry, or paraeducators.
So those 4 individuals would be at the certified staff number?
No,
No.
instructional assistants.
Those are
in support
instructional
staff.
assistants, yeah,
They're in support staff.
They're in support?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And where are the before and after care?
In support staff. As is security.
As well as the security, okay. All right, my concern here is that, you're showing a decrease in head count of 9.7, but we're still up from 2 years ago, and I just want to be clear about that. Even with declining enrollment numbers over the past couple of years, we're actually up in staff overall, we're not down.
Yeah, but, with rationale and reason for, those ups and
Mhm.
downs, yeah. And hence we try to break it down a little bit further in the certified world. So.
Okay.
Any more questions about the sheets that were just presented to us?
Well, just one comment. This sheet you just gave us does not have admin on it, right?
No, that's just certified.
Right, so
We
I was
just
thinking
broke out
that we were
certified.
swapping out one,
No, admin hasn't
Just an
changed.
addition.
Admin hasn't changed, 15.5
right?
admin. We just wanted to show the certified because that's the area that changed on this master sheet
Okay.
with the special areas.
So I think what I'm hearing is for this staffing level isn't really a specific number. It's a trend over time, and it would probably be more accurate to give us a round number, ±5 or ±10, and kind of a bound that, depending on whether or not it's September or May, the head count's going to be different.
Yeah, that could be, yep, that's accurate.
And it's also very important to understand, how did they get funded? If we all of a sudden have hired 10 more people, how did we pay them?
Well, you could have had, you could have 1 leave, we hire another one. It varied, the special ed, a lot of it in the special education costs. A student may leave district. We do transfers just like, you all do, all year long, budget transfers. So that's how we work to fund them.
But I'm gonna support Camille on this, because we do have to snap the chalk to try to get a trend of how much staff we have and how much students we have, understanding that it's a living document.
Yeah.
But in order for us to ascertain some kind of understanding of staffing, we do need to say, okay, the number we're presenting here isn't really 538 from last year, it's 527. So if we're trying to make a point that our staff has gone down, we can't really make that point because the staff has gone up. I just think it's important that we're clear about
Yeah,
that.
and I'm just, as we do our snapshot, our staff for next year is going down. Now, in 2 months from now, or the beginning of next year, that might look different based on student need. It probably will. It will look different based on student need, whether it's lower or higher, pending staff. It'll all be based on, where we could have an influx of kids, we could have a student move in that's medically fragile, we need a nurse that we need to hire. That adds a staff.
I guess just, Jeff, I've just never seen that change historically. It's the first year that I've noticed an actual change, and that's why it caught my attention.
Okay, all right.
So in prior years, when a number was reported, it stayed the same the subsequent year when the actual number really was solidified.
That was projected for last year, the fiscal year 19, last year was a projected number. We just explained, there's 4 kids that came in from Salem that, when I'm doing this in March, I would have no idea that those 4 kids would need a 1-to-1 aide. I can't possibly project 4 students. I didn't project at that time that we would need two security people.
No, and I
So-
understand
so
completely. I
that's
I don't think that happened historically.
Well, it
Tim-
has. I
Tim-
think we just didn't show it maybe the right way or show it that way, because it happens every year.
I would, the way I would look at it, I would focus on administrators across the line. I would focus on the certified staff across the line. If you let those,
They don't
that's
show.
where and that's where the big point is.
And that's why I'm asking the detailed questions, because
But
it wasn't
on the
apparent to me
on the-
where the
on
new hires were.
On the support, and on the support staff, that's where the fluctuation is,
Mhm.
driven off of.
Yeah. Kim just made a good point. We bill Salem for those
Yeah.
students as well, or those paras. So, it's not that we're paying, thank you, Kim, that's right. Sure.
You bill 100% back?
Is it 100%? Yeah.
And any benefit that are paid out to them.
That is important information for us to know. Again, if we all of a sudden have employed 10 more people, where did that money, how are we managing to pay for those salaries? Where is that money coming from?
Is that on the
Because
revenue sheet?
I know you didn't come to us asking for more money for that
No.
last year.
No.
Is that on your revenue sheet you handed
No,
out?
the 4 that are billed, where there are employees, we have to pay them, so they're in our budget, and then I offset it with the revenue that comes in from Salem. So it's a 0 impact on our budget. That revenue sheet or program, those are programs.
Right, but it's still revenue, right? I mean,
No, it's a reimbursement is what it is, not a
Bill-
revenue.
bill reimbursement.
It's a reimbursement of expenses, it's not a revenue.
I can't lay my hands on, but.
I mean, I think Tim makes a really good point to look across in your admin and your certified, all basically stay and should be remaining roughly the same outside of the reductions that we showed when we presented. When you start getting into the gritty detail of our IAs, TAs, support staff, there's so many of them, so we've got over 500 people, reflected here. It's a moving animal. I mean, we can think of a better way to show it. I mean, we'd be happy to try and work together to do that.
I'm not really asking you to change anything, I'm just asking for an explanation so
Yeah.
I can understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yep.
Tonight's theme's kind of understanding, and what we're finding out is sometimes some of the things that we thought were, they're not. And some of the probing questions we've been asking are things like that. So to me, what I'm hearing is that these numbers aren't stagnant, it's dynamic. And if you were to plot it over the course of 12 months, it's not going to be a straight line. It's going to be up and down, just like the student population. Hopefully the two would correlate with how they go up and down. But what I'm hearing, what I'm learning today, what I'm understanding is it fluctuates. It's plus or minus 10, it's plus or minus 15, just like the student population is plus or minus 5 or plus or minus 10.
Exactly.
And that would be ideally what we would see is some kind of plot that shows student population and staff over time. That's not something we're going to do today, but that's kind of what we're trying to understand, is that there's that trend, and those two trends follow each other. And I'm hearing, I think, that the administrative staff is going to be a fairly straight line, and then the teachers or
Certified. staff.
certified staff is going to trend with the student population.
Yeah.
Did that clear it up? Is that consistent?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess I did have a second question, though. I said I had 2 questions, so that was my first question. What were the 10 positions? The second question is, what type of people in the support staff moved from the district? You moved them back into the individual schools? So what types of positions are those?
The paraprofessionals, mainly the occupational therapists, the physical therapists, we had all We had kept them in district-wide new state reporting. I have to report them by school, so last year I was able to prorate, but rather than do a proration, we wanted to make sure we had the actual people captured in the schools that they work in.
Thank you.
Any other questions about these two sheets that were just added? Then we'll go back to your questions, Anna.
Okay.
And I see I did it tonight.
Okay. I'll just begin at the beginning.
It's a hell of a place to start.
The answer to the first question concerning the new hire for the preschool program, the $50,000 salary. Going back to the minutes of our meeting, I see that Lisa had asked, and Mariana had answered that this would also require $20,000 in benefits, no?
No, I said it was, we didn't know at the
You
time.
didn't know.
We have to determine the premium share for that employee.
Okay.
Based on the coverage we're going to provide for that employee and based on a
Okay.
salary so we've estimated 50,000 for a salary, but based on the Affordable Care Act, we can only bill a certain amount. They're not in a collective bargaining unit, so we have
Mhm.
the ability to negotiate what we offer for insurance for that individual.
Okay, so
So I don't have any
you don't
number
have
of
that,
benefits.
okay, that
Right.
wasn't it.
What I can tell you, it will
Yeah.
most likely be single coverage as well. So not a family coverage, which is more costly,
Mhm.
be single coverage.
So, a range of benefit, then? Could you supply a range of
So the
benefit
cost
that would be
for-
realistic?
Sure, so the cost for a single coverage right now is, I think, approximately $10,000.
Mhm.
We just will need to negotiate with the individual what their premium share will be. So for
Mhm.
example, some people pay 20%, some people pay 18%. We have the ability to negotiate a different rate for this individual because
Mhm.
they are not in collective bargaining. So I can, 10,000 will not be the amount that we bear. It'll, again, be based on what we negotiate
Okay.
with the person.
Okay, so I understand the program is mandated by the state, the preschool program that we are referencing here.
Integrated, yes.
Yes, the integrated program.
Yes.
And what is the number of students that you have in that? Is it, I had a notation of 57, was that correct?
Yeah, I would say between 57 and 65.
57 to
So,
65.
and slightly more than half are identified as special education needs, and then the other are typical peers.
Okay. And do you have someone in this position at this time? Anyone doing this very same work, and this would be a second person doing this?
No, it would not be a second person, no.
A second person, so the,
No.
The CODA, you're asking about the
But-
CODA?
Yes.
Yeah, we would not be a
Yes.
second.
so does anyone,
No.
so you're not providing those services at this time in
We
that
have a
program?
contract with the provider. We added a contract to
Okay.
get us through the end of the year because our numbers are so high. We have a full-time occupational therapist who is, that's a different licensure, right? than
Right.
CODA, which is an assistant.
Right.
So the higher level person we have in our occupational therapist who serves the preschool program, the caseload is too high for that person to manage Haynes and integrated preschool.
Okay.
Along with our specialty programs that are provided in that building. So we needed to provide her with more support to cover all the hours that are required for the students. So this year, we are using some contracting dollars to provide a CODA to meet that need. And what we'd like to do is, next year, is instead of using a contract with an outside agency, is have our own staff person who's working in that role.
Okay.
So it will replace the contract,
Mhm.
so it will still only be one CODA.
Right. What's the value of that contract?
We pay hourly, and it just started at the end of February, so. it's
Okay,
not-
so you're in the middle of it and you really don't have
Yeah.
any, like, year-to-year
Right.
information?
Yeah, we've never done that before. Our numbers
Okay.
in preschool with our special education population are just that
Mhm.
intense and that high right now. It's just
Okay.
trending that way. So.
Okay. My last question on this topic, is this mandated by any numerical requirements? So if you have your population of 57 to 65 students, half of whom are special needs, then, is the state telling you you need to provide X hours? And then you're getting that by way of your contract plus your full-time?
Right, so students have what's called an individualized education plan, an
Mhm.
IEP, and the team decides what level of service a student growing number of students identified with an IEP. One person, one OT could not cover all the services to the students because what's also required in that role is testing and evaluation and reevaluation of current students, the service contact hours with the student, and attending those IEP planning meetings. So, and the current occupational therapist that serves the caseload is assigned to all of the Lily B. Haynes elementary school students, the 3 autism programs at Haynes, plus the integrated
I see.
preschool. So,
Okay.
the caseload is just too high for one person to meet all the hours that are required in those plans.
Okay.
And so the plans drive the hours.
Yeah, there's where we would be breaking the law or not meeting requirements if we're not meeting IEP hours for students.
Okay, so that was the heart of what I was trying to get at.
So Ann, if I might, write on that
Yes.
note so we don't lose it.
Yes.
What's the number of special education kids in the school system?
Kim, what do we have, 400 and,
We were at 399 the last time I ran the number, but it varies,
Okay.
you know.
399 out of 2,700.
Yeah, we've gone as high, you know, in the last, I would say, 18 months, we've gone as high as 425. So, you know, we're right in there.
Thanks.
I think in the future, if you're gonna respond, because it's being recorded, your voice probably isn't getting picked up, so you might, no, that's fine. No, I just thought of that now, so if, maybe if you just come up to the podium in the future. But thank you for your help. Any other questions on question 1?
No.
Okay, I think we're gonna go through these questions one at a time.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, if I may.
As opposed to everybody asking their own
Yes.
questions, and
Yes.
if this isn't explicit enough for you, then we'll have to just
No,
kind of walk our way through it.
That was helpful information, thank you. It was missing
Okay.
elsewhere.
So you want to continue on question number 2?
Actually, question number 2, we might want to discuss that when we get to question, it sort of reappears at the end as well.
So does anybody else have a question on question 2 as it appears? If you want to come back to it when we get to another
Yeah.
question, that's fine.
Well,
Yeah.
what's the answer? The board currently offers incentives to the administrators, paraprofessionals, and custodians. We'll continue to review incentive options. So do we offer incentives to people to opt out of insurance right now?
yes, administrators,
what
paraprofessionals,
about-
and custodians.
What about the teachers?
No,
Why
it's
not?
not part of their contract.
So can we make it part of their contract?
You'd have to negotiate it.
Would you be willing to take that on and negotiate it?
I think you have to be cautious there. There's a lot of moving parts with negotiating, your staff members' contracts.
Well, I mean, the worst they can say is
I
no,
can't say-
right?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I would say no altogether, Lisa. It'd have to be discussed and
I don't think we
processed
should
through.
Talk about that now in the open session. I think that's the executive
Yeah.
talking about
Okay,
that.
so you don't have to talk about it, because I get it, but here's my thinking. So, I don't know how all these work, but oftentimes, everyone means well, but they say that's part of the contract, and it becomes this sacred cow that we can't touch. And I'm just asking, there's a big chunk of money that we could save by offering incentives to people to opt out of their insurance and use their spouse's insurance. And they can say no, they can say, nope, I like this insurance better. So I see, I mean, I don't want to sound cavalier, but I'm not clear on what we would lose by offering the option.
Well, I think that's why we said we'll continue to review options, as the new insurance plan is rolled out. It's not gonna go away. I think it's something that we continue to need to look at.
Right, but I'm trying to get to, I don't want this to be open-ended, a someday thing. I'm asking if it's something that we will address the next time we negotiate and put it on the table. I just want to know if we'll do that.
Didn't we have Board of Finance members as participating? in
Part of
No,
the
no.
teacher contract negotiations.
No, we came in the last day when everything was decided. You told us how the
Not
process
No,
worked.
that's not true.
No.
Okay, well, it must
There
have been
was-
somebody
Okay,
else.
so-
And we want to continue to have that practice of having, because we need it's great to have the diversity of thought when we're sitting down and doing the negotiations.
Okay, so are you telling me that because we brought it up now, next year when we come in,
It's not next year, it's 3-year contract.
So what I'm hearing is next time that there's a contract negotiation, this will be considered along with everything else as part of a
I didn't
holistic
hear that.
package. That's what I think.
That's why, what we said, that
Well, no, as far as the collective bargaining unit's concerned. You didn't say that here, but I think the words that I heard you say was, you can't say specifically now outside of negotiations what you will and won't
No,
do,
I can't give an, yeah, I can't
but
give
you
an
will
answer on that.
consider it as part of your negotiation.
Absolutely, I think everything's on the table when we're negotiating, yep, definitely.
In 2022.
At a time that we may or may remember that, yes, absolutely.